The line at the airport crawled forward. Businessmen in press suits scrolled through emails. Families clutched passports. Children whined with impatience. At the very end stood a man who didn't belong. His coat was ragged, his boots caked with old mud, and his beard hung in uneven strands. The smell of worn clothes clung to him, drawing side-eyes and whispered comments. His name was Jack Miller, though no one asked. In his pocket, crumpled with sweat, was a one-way ticket he had bought with every last dollar he could scrape together. Today was supposed to be a chance for dignity. Jack shuffled forward, clutching a small backpack that looked ready to split apart. When his turn came at the counter, the young woman behind the desk wrinkled her nose before forcing a polite smile. "Sir, are you sure you're in the right line?" she asked. Jack placed the ticket down, voice rough. "Flight 237, Los Angeles." She scanned it, lips tight. "Everything's valid, but you'll need to, wait aside." A man in line muttered loudly. "Great, now they're letting the homeless on board." Laughter snickered through the line. Jack said nothing. He had learned silence was safer than pride. Minutes later, as passengers boarded, Jack stepped forward. The gate agent stopped him. "Sir, I'm sorry, but the captain doesn't feel comfortable allowing you to board." Jack froze. "I paid for that ticket." She shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, but your appearance has made other passengers express concern." Her voice lowered. "They think you may cause problems." Jack's jaw tightened. Around him, whispers hissed. "He'll stink up the cabin. Probably dangerous. What if he steals something?" Jack felt heat rise to his cheeks. He wasn't dangerous. He wasn't a thief, but to them, he was less than human. An older man in a suit stepped forward, glaring at Jack. "I have a business meeting. I won't share a row with him. Either he stays, or I'll complain to corporate." The gate agent straightened. "Sir, please." But the man cut her off. "Don't, sir me. Do your job." Jack clenched the strap of his backpack. He could walk away. He could vanish back into the shadows of the city. But this was his last chance, his last ticket. "I have a right," Jack whispered. His voice shook, but it carried weight. The agent hesitated, torn between policy and prejudice. Finally, she sighed. "Fine, but you'll sit in the back, away from the others." Jack nodded stiffly. As he walked down the jet bridge, eyes burned into him. A mother pulled her child closer. A young couple sneered. The businessman muttered curses under his breath. Jack kept his gaze low, his steps heavy. Inside, the cabin smelled of recycled air and judgment. He slid into the last row, next to the bathroom, ignoring the stairs. He set his backpack under the seat, leaned back, and closed his eyes. He didn't expect kindness. He only wanted to fly. The flight attendants avoided his eyes. One dropped a plastic cup of water on his tray without a word. Jack sipped slowly, pretending not to notice the couple 2 rows ahead, whispering, pointing back at him. A teenager angled his phone, snapping a photo. Jack caught his reflection in the darkened screen, wild hair, hollow eyes, beard like a storm. He looked exactly like what they feared. But once, he had worn a uniform. Once, he had carried responsibility heavier than this plane. No one here knew that. And maybe that was better, until life decided otherwise. The engines roared, and the plane lifted. Jack pressed his forehead to the window, watching the ground fall away. For a fleeting moment, he remembered the sky's endless blue, freedom, purpose. but the memory cut like glass. That life was gone. Now he was just another ghost, shunned even in a crowded cabin. The flight smoothed out, passengers settling into movies and meals. Jack tried to rest, though hunger gnawed. His stomach growled. The woman across the aisle wrinkled her nose. "Disgusting," she muttered. Jack turned away. He wanted to vanish. Instead, fate would soon place every eye on him. An hour into the flight, turbulence jolted the plane. Drinks spilled, passengers gasped. The attendants rushed to calm everyone. Jack barely moved, used to rougher rides. But then came the announcement, shaky and urgent. "Ladies and gentlemen, if there is any medical personnel on board, please make yourselves known immediately." Murmurs erupted. Jack sat straighter. The intercom continued. "The captain has collapsed. He is unconscious. We require immediate assistance." Gasps filled the cabin. Panic spread like fire. The businessman who had mocked Jack paled, clutching his seat. A child began to cry. For the first time, fear silenced the whispers. A doctor rushed forward, kneeling near the cockpit door. Flight attendants whispered frantically. "He's not responding!" one cried. The co-pilot, pale and sweating, stepped out. "We're on autopilot, but I can't land this plane alone." Chaos erupted. Passengers shouted questions, demands, prayers. Jack's pulse quickened. He knew that tone. He knew that fear. Memories crashed back squadrons, drills, emergencies. His hands twitched as if still gripping a control stick. He rose halfway, then sat back. They wouldn't listen, not to him, not to a man they thought was nothing. But then the co-pilot shouted, "If anyone has flight experience anything, speak now." Silence. Dozens of eyes darted nervously. No one moved. The co-pilot's voice broke. "Please, we need help, or we won't make it." Jack's heart hammered. He couldn't stay silent. Slowly he stood. "I can." The words carried, low but steady. The passengers turned as one, faces twisted with disbelief. "Him?" the businessman barked. "The bum?" Laughter burst nervously, edged with hysteria. The co-pilot scanned Jack up and down. "Sir, this is serious." Jack's jaw tightened. "So am I." For a moment, silence held. The world waited. Jack Miller, the man nobody wanted, had just offered to save them all. The co-pilot frowned. "What kind of experience?" Jack's voice carried the weight of truth. 20 years in the Air Force, flight commander, logged more hours in the sky than you've been alive. Gasps rippled through the cabin. Some passengers scoffed. Others whispered, doubt warring with hope. The businessman sneered. "He's lying. He's just trying to get attention." But the co-pilot studied Jack's eyes, steady, unflinching, the eyes of someone who had faced storms. Slowly he nodded. "Come with me." The cabin exploded with noise protests, disbelief, desperate prayers. Jack walked forward through the storm of judgment, every step echoing with purpose. As Jack approached the cockpit, passengers stared as if seeing him for the first time. The businessman shouted after him, "You'll kill us all." Others clutched hands, whispering prayers. Jack ignored them. He passed the crying child, the terrified mother, the teenager still clutching his phone. For once, Jack didn't feel small. He felt alive. The co-pilot ushered him inside. The captain lay slumped, face pale, breath shallow. Jack's eyes locked onto the controls. Familiar, comforting. A language he hadn't spoken in years. but one he could never forget. His hands flexed. "Tell me fuel, altitude, and weather," he ordered. The co-pilot blinked. Fuel, 60%. Altitude, 30,000. Weather clear for now." Jack nodded. "All right, we've got time. Let's stabilize." He slid into the captain's seat. The leather groaned under his weight. His fingers danced across switches instinctively, muscle memory guiding him. The hum of engines, the vibration of controls, it was like shaking hands with an old friend. The co-pilot stared. "You weren't lying." Jack didn't look up. "I don't lie about the sky." Outside, clouds stretched endlessly. Jack's reflection in the glass wasn't a homeless man. It was a pilot again. And for the first time in years, he belonged. Meanwhile, in the cabin, rumors flew. "He's crazy!" someone shouted. "No, he looked serious," another argued. The businessmen ranted. "We're doomed. Letting a bum fly the plane? Insanity." But the mother with a crying child whispered, "He might be our only hope." Slowly, the tide shifted. Fear gnawed at prejudice. People who once sneered now clung to the possibility that the man they mocked might be the one to save them. The irony burned through the cabin like fire. Inside the cockpit, Jack adjusted knobs, steadying the autopilot. The co-pilot watched, wide-eyed. "You know this better than I do," Jack smirked faintly. "I trained kids like you once." The co-pilot hesitated. "Why? Why are you here then? On this flight? Like this?" Jack's eyes darkened. "Because life doesn't care how many wings you earned. One mistake, one loss, and it takes everything." His jaw clenched. "But today isn't about me. Today's about getting these people home." The co-pilot nodded, humbled. Together they steadied the craft, two men bound by urgency and trust. The cabin shook as turbulence hit again. Passengers screamed. Jack's voice crackled over the intercom. "This is Jack Miller. I'll be assisting in the cockpit. We'll land safely. Remain calm." The businessman barked. "Who put him in charge?" But his words were drowned by the calm tone of a man who had led squadrons through storms. For the first time, passengers quieted. Fear didn't vanish, but hope flickered. A man they had shunned was now their lifeline. Fate had flipped the script. Jack gripped the controls, steadying the nose. Sweat rolled down his temple, but his hands were sure. The co-pilot fed him data. "Descent in 40 minutes," Jack nodded. Plenty of time to brief, pull the checklist. They worked in sync, their voices calm despite chaos. In the cabin, passengers whispered prayers, clutched hands, or stared at the cockpit door as if it were salvation. Jack blocked it all out. For him, the world was narrowed to instruments, gauges, and the endless sky. It was like stepping back into himself, into the man he thought he'd lost forever. But shadows of doubt gnawed. What if he failed? What if years of rust caught him at the worst moment? Jack inhaled deeply. No, doubt had no seat here. He remembered every soul depending on him, people who had mocked, judged, dismissed him. He would save them anyway, not for them, for himself, to prove he wasn't finished, to prove he still mattered. His grip tightened. He wasn't a ghost. Not anymore. The co-pilot glanced sideways. "Why'd you speak up? You could have stayed quiet." Jack's eyes stayed on the horizon. "Because silence kills more than bullets. I learned that too late. Never again." The co-pilot swallowed hard, respect blooming. Jack wasn't just saving the plane. He was teaching him something deeper, that dignity and courage could live even in rags. That worth wasn't measured in bank accounts or press suits. It was measured in choices. The intercom crackled again. "Ladies and gentlemen, prepare for descent." The words sent ripples of relief and terror. Passengers braced, clutching armrests. Jack's voice cut steady. "Trust me." In the back row, his empty water cup rattled with the vibrations, a reminder of where he began this journey. Soon, everyone would know him not as a vagrant, but as the man who refused to stay silent when the sky called. The homeless man they shunned was about to land them safely or die trying. And for Jack Miller, there was no greater truth. Once a pilot, always a pilot. The first 10 minutes after Jack's announcement were unbearable. Every second felt stretched thin, every sound amplified. The engines groaned against the storm. The cabin rattled as if the very air wanted to rip the plane apart. A baby wailed, passengers clutched at armrests, and someone began sobbing uncontrollably. Jack's voice, steady and low, carried through the intercom, urging calm. Yet fear was a beast hard to tame. People glanced toward the cockpit, whispering about the man now sitting at the controls. A man they had mocked minutes earlier. Some still doubted, but doubt was losing its grip. The co-pilot's hands trembled as he worked. Sweat slicked his forehead, and his voice cracked when he gave Jack the latest readouts. Crosswinds increasing, visibility down to less than 2 miles. Jack didn't flinch. His hands moved across the controls with precision, each adjustment purposeful, almost graceful. "We ride with the wind, not against it," he muttered, more to himself than anyone. His calm baffled the co-pilot. How could a man who looked like he'd slept on sidewalks for years command the sky with such confidence? Jack's eyes, sharp and unwavering, told the answer because this was where he belonged. In the cabin, arguments flared. The businessman rose to his feet again, shouting that the flight crew had lost their minds. "We're letting a vagrant play pilot," he bellowed, spittle flying. Some passengers told him to sit down, others hissed at him to shut up. One young woman snapped, "Do you have a better idea? Can you fly a plane?" The businessman sputtered, his face red with rage, but no answer on his lips. The boy who had been filming earlier whispered to his mother, "He looks like he knows what he's doing." The mother simply nodded, fear softening into hope. The storm worsened. The plane bucked violently, throwing cups and trays into the aisle. Oxygen masks fell from above, dangling like eerie yellow faces. Screams filled the air, but Jack's voice came again, firm, commanding, and calm. "Masks are a precaution. Put them on if you need to. We are not falling, we are flying." Something in his tone cut through the panic. His words felt like a rope tossed into a raging river, something for frightened souls to cling to. For the first time, passengers began to listen not to the businessman's panic, but to Jack's quiet strength. Inside the cockpit, the co-pilot stole glances at Jack, watching as he guided the craft with uncanny ease. "You said you were Air Force," the younger man murmured, voice hushed. Jack nodded without breaking focus. 15 years. I flew transport missions, combat sorties, search and rescue ops, carried men who trusted me with their lives." He adjusted a lever, correcting their pitch, "and I never lost one." The co-pilot swallowed, feeling both awe and shame. This man, dressed in rags, carried a history richer and heavier than his own fresh uniform ever could. He wasn't just flying the plane, he was reclaiming himself. Another jolt rocked the aircraft, worse than before. Lights flickered, alarms blared. The co-pilot gasped, fumbling at switches. "Engine 2, temperature spiking!" Jack scanned quickly, made his decision, and cut power to the overheating engine. The cabin shuddered violently, one side dipping. Passengers shrieked, but Jack's grip was iron. "Level it out," he barked. His hands and feet moved in unison, coaxing the plane back into balance. "We can fly on one engine," he assured the co-pilot. "It's not ideal, but it's possible." His tone left no room for doubt. And slowly, the trembling aircraft obeyed him, settling again. In the cabin, panic reached a fever pitch when the plane dipped. The businessman screamed, "We're all going to die!" He tried to rally others into storming the cockpit, insisting Jack was to blame. But this time, he was silenced by a burly passenger who stood, towering over him. "Sit down." His voice was a growl, filled with the authority of someone who had no patience left for hysteria. The businessman sank back into his seat trembling. Around them, passengers began to murmur words of support for Jack instead of fear. Faith, fragile and flickering, had taken root. Jack's voice returned to the intercom. "We've lost one engine. That doesn't mean we're doomed. It means the challenge just got harder. And I don't run from challenges." His words struck chords deep inside people. A child whispered to his mother, "He sounds like a superhero." The mother smiled through tears. "No, honey. He's something better. He's real." Even the skeptics couldn't help but feel the weight of his conviction. This wasn't bravado. It was truth, carved from scars and storms most of them could never imagine. The co-pilot, steadier now, leaned closer. "Why didn't you tell them before? That you were a pilot?" Jack's lips curved in a sad smile. "Would you have believed me? Look at me." He gestured to his ragged coat, his stained hands. "People don't see who you are. They see what you've become. And I became nothing. Easier to let them think it." His voice hardened. "But tonight, the sky didn't give me a choice. It called, and I answered, just like I used to." The co-pilot nodded slowly, realizing this man wasn't just saving lives, he was saving himself. Lightning split the sky outside, illuminating Jack's face in stark flashes. His eyes glinted like steel, his jaw clenched with focus. He wasn't a broken drifter in this moment. He was Captain Jack Miller again, commander of wings and storms. The co-pilot followed his lead like a student at the feet of a master. Instruments beeped steadily as Jack guided them lower, threading through turbulence as though carving a path with his bare hands. The storm howled, but inside the cockpit, there was only resolve. In the cabin, the teenager who had filmed earlier now stood with surprising courage. "He's going to land this. I know it." People turned to him, and his words, spoken with conviction, spread like a spark. A woman whispered, "Yes, he will." Soon, passengers began to murmur agreement. Even those who had doubted fell quiet, unwilling to break the fragile faith that was building. The businessman sat in silence, glaring but powerless, his words drowned by the new chorus of belief. The co-pilot checked the radar. "Runway in sight in 15 minutes if the storm doesn't block us." Jack nodded, adjusting flaps. "We'll thread the needle. Just stay with me." His hands moved with grace, each motion confident and exact. The co-pilot realized he wasn't just watching a man fly, he was watching muscle memory forged through countless hours, through lives saved and missions survived. Jack was more than capable. He was extraordinary. The plane jolted again, and Jack's eyes narrowed. "Downdraft. Hold steady." He fought against the invisible fist of the storm, muscles straining. The co-pilot copied his moves, sweat dripping, heart pounding. For long minutes, they wrestled with the sky itself, the aircraft trembling like a leaf. Then, slowly, the plane leveled again. The co-pilot gasped, exhilarated and shaken. "You make it look like war." Jack's lips curved faintly. "It is war. And the sky always tests you harder than any enemy." Passengers clutched hands, whispered prayers, and stared at the cockpit door like it was the gate of heaven. Some cried silently, others sat rigid, teeth clenched, yet no one dared stand. No one doubted openly anymore. The plane no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a test. And the man they had rejected at the gate was the one carrying them through. The irony wasn't lost on them. It humbled them, breaking arrogance into gratitude. The intercom clicked again. Jack's voice was softer this time, almost personal. "You don't know me. You don't need to. But know this, I won't give up on you. Not until we're safely on the ground. That's a promise." His words resonated. Tears streamed down cheeks, hands squeezed tighter. In that moment, even strangers felt united, bound by a homeless man's vow of survival. The co-pilot finally asked the question that had burned inside him. "What happens after this, when we land?" Jack's gaze stayed forward. "Doesn't matter. What matters is landing this plane." But deep down, his chest ached. He knew once the storm was over, the world would see him again as nothing. Yet, a flicker of hope glowed. Maybe, just maybe, tonight would change something. Not just for the passengers, but for him. Another alarm blared. Fuel pressure warning. The co-pilot cursed. Jack acted instantly, adjusting valves, rerouting flow. "We've got enough," he muttered. "But this bird wants to test us every step." His calm steadied the younger man, who began to mirror Jack's focus instead of his fear. Together, they worked seamlessly, as though they had flown as a team for years. The runway lights finally flickered faintly on the radar, glowing like salvation in the darkness. The co-pilot gasped. "There it is." Jack's grip tightened. "Not yet. We're still in the fight. Landing's the hardest part." His voice carried over the intercom. "Everyone brace yourselves. It won't be smooth, but we will touch ground." Passengers cried, clung, but for the first time, they believed. Jack stared out at the storm, the runway lights shimmering faintly through sheets of rain. His reflection in the glass wasn't ragged anymore. It was sharp, steady, unbroken. For the first time in years, he recognized himself the man who had once been trusted with wings, and now, once more, hundreds of lives depended on him. He would not fail. Not now. The descent began. The engines strained. The storm roared. Passengers prayed. Jack's hands were firm, his voice steady as he commanded the plane down through chaos. Every second felt endless. Every breath held. The lights of the runway grew closer, brighter, like a beacon in the storm. Jack whispered under his breath, "Almost home." And for the first time, he believed it not just for the passengers, but for himself. The storm hammered the plane with relentless fury as the descent deepened. Rain streaked the windows in jagged rivers. Lightning carved white scars across the sky, and the engines groaned like wounded beasts. Passengers clutched armrests, every face pale with dread. Jack's voice over the intercom was steady as stone. "This will be rough. But hold on, we're going home." His hands gripped the yoke firmly, guiding the aircraft through invisible hands trying to shove it from the sky. He had flown into battles before, but this was different. Tonight, every soul behind him was his squadron. He couldn't fail. The runway lights flickered through the curtain of rain. They looked impossibly far away, shimmering like a mirage. The co-pilot's breath hitched. "Crosswinds, 30 knots!" Jack's jaw clenched. "We ride with it. Don't fight." He adjusted the rudder pedals, angling the plane against the gusts. The aircraft groaned, wings tilting dangerously, but Jack's voice stayed calm. "Easy, girl. You'll fly true." Sweat trickled down his temple, but his eyes never wavered. The co-pilot glanced sideways, awe dawning again. This wasn't luck. This was mastery, carved from years of storms, scars, and steel will. In the cabin, silence fell except for stifled sobs and whispered prayers. A mother kissed her child's hair, whispering, "He'll save us." The teenager who had mocked Jack earlier now clutched his phone tightly, but didn't film. He simply stared at the cockpit door as though willing the man inside to succeed. Even the businessman sat rigid, lips pressed tight, shame creeping into his eyes. He couldn't admit it, not yet, but even he knew without Jack, they were finished. Jack lowered the landing gear, the heavy thud reverberating through the cabin. "Gear down, flaps 30. His voice was calm, almost casual, but his heart pounded like a war drum. The runway lights glowed brighter, closer now, but the storm wanted to rip them away. The co-pilot's voice cracked. "She's drifting!" Jack's grip tightened. "Hold her steady, eyes on the horizon." His body moved with instinct, correcting, balancing, guiding. He whispered under his breath, words he once told rookies. "The sky is cruel, but she'll respect you if you don't break." The aircraft jolted, slammed by a downdraft. Gasps erupted from the cabin as the nose dipped. Jack hauled back, muscles straining, his teeth gritted. "Not today," he growled. The plane responded sluggishly, then steadied, leveling just above the runway lights. The co-pilot exhaled in relief. "You caught her." Jack nodded, voice even. "We're not done. Focus." Every nerve in his body was alive, attuned to the machine beneath him. It wasn't just metal and wires, it was an old companion, demanding respect. Tonight, it would obey. 500 feet, the co-pilot called. Jack's eyes narrowed. Rain pounded harder, the windshield a blur of streaking water. He relied on instruments now, trusting them like old friends. "Keep her lined up. Trust the beacon," he ordered. His voice was steel. The co-pilot followed, steady now, learning from Jack's calm. In the cabin, passengers braced, some whispering prayers aloud. The businessman muttered, "Please, God," though he didn't know if he was begging Jack or heaven. At 200 feet, a sudden gust shoved the aircraft sideways. Screams erupted. Jack reacted instantly, banking against the wind, his hands and feet moving like a conductor guiding a storm-born symphony. The plane wavered, fought him, but Jack refused to yield. His voice cut over the intercom. "Hold tight. We're landing." He spoke not just to them, but to himself, to the sky, to the ghosts of comrades who once trusted him. Tonight, he carried them all. The wheels kissed the runway with a bone-rattling thud. For a heartbeat, the aircraft skidded, tires shrieking against slick asphalt. The cabin filled with cries, Jack's jaw locked, his grip iron. "Stay with me," he muttered, wrestling the beast. Slowly, the screech softened, the plane straightened, momentum dragging it down the strip. The rain pounded, the storm howled. But the aircraft rolled true, slowing, until finally, mercifully, it came to a halt. Silence followed, deafening, impossible silence. Then a roar erupted. Cheers exploded through the cabin. People sobbed, clapped, shouted Jack's name. Strangers hugged each other. Mothers wept into children's hair. Hands reached toward the cockpit as though trying to touch their savior. The co-pilot leaned back, shaking, tears brimming his eyes. "You did it." Jack exhaled, finally letting the tension slip from his shoulders. His voice was steady but soft. "We did it." He sat there for a moment, staring at the rain-streaked glass. He had landed planes in war zones, but none had ever felt like this. None had ever given him back what he thought was gone forever. When the cabin doors opened, the storm still raged outside, but inside there was light laughter, tears, gratitude. Passengers filed out, many pausing at the cockpit door. A woman touched Jack's hand, whispering, "Thank you." A young man murmured, "You saved my life." Even the businessman, pale and trembling, met Jack's eyes and whispered, "I was wrong." Jack nodded. Nothing more. He didn't need apologies. He had proven himself in action, not words. On the tarmac, emergency vehicles swarmed, flashing lights cutting through the storm. Paramedics rushed to the unconscious captain, whisking him away. The airline's officials hurried aboard, their polished shoes splashing in puddles. They demanded answers, their voices high with stress. But when they saw Jack, ragged and soaked, stepping from the cockpit with the co-pilot at his side, even they hesitated. Something in his bearing, in the way he carried himself, silenced their questions. He wasn't a vagrant now. He was the man who had saved them all. The co-pilot spoke first, his voice firm. "This man saved over 200 lives tonight. You owe him respect." The officials faltered, nodding stiffly. One extended a hand. "Mr. Miller, the airline, would like to speak to you about opportunities." Jack shook his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I didn't do this for a job. I did it because it needed to be done." His voice carried the finality of a soldier laying down his weapon. He didn't crave titles. He craved dignity. And tonight, he had reclaimed it. Passengers lingered in the terminal, refusing to leave without seeing him again. When Jack finally walked through, applause thundered. Strangers who once scorned him now clapped, cheered, even cried. The teenager who had filmed earlier ran up, his phone forgotten in his pocket. "Sir, you were amazing." Jack crouched slightly, meeting the boy's wide eyes. "Remember this," he said softly. "Strength isn't how you look. It's what you do when it matters." The boy nodded fiercely, as though carving the words into his soul. News spread fast. By morning, headlines blazed. "Homeless man saves hundreds in miracle landing." Photos of Jack, beard dripping rain, eyes fierce in the cockpit, spread across every screen. Social media exploded with praise, donations, offers of shelter, even campaigns to honor him. Jack ignored most of it. Fame was never his goal. But he couldn't ignore the shift in the way people looked at him now, not with scorn, but with respect. Respect he had thought lost forever. The airline invited him to a press conference. Jack refused at first, but Bear, the burly biker who had helped him weeks earlier, found him and insisted. "Tell your story. Not for you, for the others out there, still invisible." So Jack stood at a podium, lights blinding, cameras clicking. His voice was low but steady. "I'm not a hero. I'm a man who lost his way. But last night, The sky gave me one more chance. If you see someone broken, don't look away. They might be carrying more than you'll ever know." The room erupted in applause. In the days that followed, Jack's life began to shift. He was offered housing, clothing, even a position with the airline as a consultant. He accepted the basics: shelter, food, dignity. But he declined the glory. Instead, he spent his time visiting shelters, speaking to veterans, reaching out to those who, like him, had been invisible. "I was one of you," he told them. "And I still am, but you're not finished. None of us are." His words carried weight because they were lived, not just spoken. One afternoon, Jack returned to the airport cafe where he had once been shunned. The same clerk looked up, eyes wide with recognition. But this time, instead of wrinkling her nose, she whispered, "Mr. Miller, thank you." Jack ordered a coffee, sat by the window, and watched planes rise into the sky. He didn't need applause. He didn't need headlines. He had what mattered: the quiet dignity of a man who had faced the storm and walked out stronger. The co-pilot visited him often. They shared meals, laughter, even quiet silences. One evening, the young man admitted, "I learned more from you in those hours than in all my training. You didn't just save the plane, you saved me." Jack smiled faintly. "Good. Then carry it forward. Respect the sky. Respect the people who trust you." It wasn't a lecture. It was a passing of the torch, from one pilot to another, from a man scarred by the past to one still shaping his future. Months passed. Jack's beard was trimmed now, his clothes clean, his body healthier, but he never let go of his scars. They reminded him of where he had been, of the darkness he had survived. He still walked through the city streets, greeting the homeless he once called brothers. He still remembered nights on benches, cold and forgotten. But now, he carried something else: hope. Hope that their stories, like his, weren't finished yet. On a quiet evening, Jack stood on a hill overlooking the runway. A plane roared into the sky, lights glowing against the twilight. He raised a hand, as if saluting an old comrade. His voice was barely a whisper. "Once a pilot, always a pilot." He turned, walking back toward the city. He wasn't just a homeless man anymore. He wasn't just a veteran. He was Jack Miller, the man who the world had doubted, but who had flown them safely through the storm. His life had been broken, but that night in the sky, he had found it again.